There is something deeply mysterious about a woman who walks with unshakable faith in God's purpose. She may not be the loudest voice in the room, nor the most outwardly qualified, but there's a stillness to her spirit that speaks of something eternal. You can see it in her eyes, not a look of confidence in herself, but of unwavering trust in the one who called her. While the world is chasing titles, approval, and visibility, she has already found her place in the heart of God. And because she knows where she stands with him, she isn't easily moved. This kind of woman does not panic when life doesn't go according to plan. She doesn't flinch when doors close, when relationships shift, or when the storms come. She has already settled in her spirit that she is not living for the applause of men, but for the approval of her master. Her identity is not found in her past, her job, her family status, or her followers. It is anchored in the truth that she was formed with intention, chosen with care, and placed here on divine assignment. When a woman is marked by God, the path he sets before her often doesn't look like the one she imagined. In fact, it usually costs her more than she expected. But because she walks by faith and not by sight, she doesn't measure her steps by comfort, convenience, or clarity. She moves when he says move. She waits when he says wait. And though she may wrestle with the silence of heaven, she doesn't interpret delay as denial. She knows that the same God who called her is also the God who equips her, even when the tools look like trials. Faith, for her, is not an emotion. It's not a spiritual high. It is the soil where she plants every decision, every prayer, and every expectation. This woman has cried tears no one saw, fasted in secret, and worshipped when she didn't feel anything at all. She knows what it's like to walk through fire without smelling like smoke, to sit in a dark place and still whisper, "Lord, I trust you." That trust isn't a performance. It's been tested, refined, and sealed in the furnace of surrender. I have seen this kind of faith, and I tell you, it shakes the very gates of hell. Not because she is loud, but because she is rooted. Not because she is perfect, but because she is obedient. And when God finds such a vessel, someone who refuses to bow to fear, who refuses to be defined by culture, and who keeps pressing even when the way is hidden, that is a woman he can trust with heaven's agenda. Her life is not shaped by trends, it is shaped by truth. The Word of God is not a decoration on her bookshelf. It is her daily bread. She clings to it not as an accessory, but as a lifeline. And because of that, she knows who she is and whose she is. So when the enemy comes whispering lies, telling her she's too much, too little, too late, she stands firm, because she has heard the voice of the shepherd, and she will not follow another. This woman doesn't need to see the whole staircase. It is enough for her to take the next step. She doesn't demand signs and wonders, though they may come. She walks in the quiet confidence that if God brought her to it, he will carry her through it. And when people ask her how she does it, how she keeps going, keeps trusting, keeps believing, she doesn't point to herself. She points to him. You see, when a woman is chosen by God, he often asks her to walk a path that makes no sense to others. She will be misunderstood. She will be overlooked. But mark my words, she will never be forsaken. The world may not recognize her significance, but heaven knows her name. Angels move at her intercession. Demons tremble at her resilience. She may seem ordinary, but she carries the extraordinary presence of God wherever she goes. And though life may press her on every side, she is not crushed. Though she may be perplexed, she is not in despair. Though she may be struck down, she is not destroyed. Why? Because the one who called her is faithful. And her faith is not built on what she sees, but on what she knows to be true. God is with her, God is for her, and God is using everything, even the pain, to fulfill His perfect purpose. She may not always feel strong, but her strength is not in her own hands. It is in the one who upholds her with His righteous right hand. And every time she stands when it would be easier to fall, every time she worships when it would be easier to quit, she declares to the world that her faith is not a theory. It is a living, breathing, burning reality. That's why the mark of unshakable faith is one of the first signs of a woman chosen by God. Because only a woman who has been called by Him, held by Him, and sustained by Him can walk through a world like this and still keep her eyes on eternity. If you want to know whether a woman hath truly been marked by the hand of God, don't look at how high she stands, look at how low she bows. The woman chosen by God does not carry herself with the airs of entitlement or the need to be constantly seen. Instead, she walks with a spirit that is low to the ground, not in weakness, but in reverence. In a world obsessed with self, promotion, and personal platforms, she is more interested in pleasing God than in building her brand. Her greatness is not in her visibility, but in her availability to serve wherever the Lord places her. There's a sacred power in humility that the world cannot understand. They confuse it with timidity or passivity, but God sees it differently. In fact, He exalts the humble. And when He finds a woman who is not trying to take credit, who is not trying to control the outcome, who is willing to wash feet in secret without applause, He calls her blessed. Her humility is not performative. It's born out of an intimate knowledge of who she is before a holy God. She knows that everything she has, every gift, every opportunity, every open door, has come from Him. So she carries it all with open hands. She doesn't see service as something beneath her, because she understands that the kingdom of God is upside down. The first shall be last, and the greatest is the one who serves. So whether she's speaking on a stage or sweeping the floor after the gathering, she does it all as unto the Lord. And she does it with joy, not because it's easy, not because anyone is watching, but because her heart has been trained to love the low places, the quiet, hidden places where Jesus is often found. I have known women like this women who have spent decades in prayer closets, interceding for others, giving their time, their love, their labor, and never once expecting repayment. Women who are the first to notice when someone is hurting, who will drop everything to sit with the grieving or feed the hungry or encourage the weary. And they do it without needing a title or a spotlight. In fact, they would rather go unnoticed because they aren't doing it for recognition. They're doing it for the one who sees in secret. You see, a woman chosen by God does not need to be celebrated to keep going. She does not need a round of applause or a public thank you to feel valuable. She finds her worth in her Father's eyes. She understands that heaven's reward is far greater than anything man can offer. So she keeps serving, keeps loving, keeps giving quietly, faithfully, sacrificially. There is a holy beauty to this kind of woman. She listens more than she speaks. She prays more than she posts, and when she does speak, it's with wisdom that has been forged in silence. There's a weight to her words, not because she's trying to impress, but because she's speaking from a place of deep surrender. People are drawn to her not because she shines so brightly, but because she reflects the light of someone greater. And let me say, this humility is not weakness. It's strength under submission. It's a woman who could defend herself, but chooses to trust God as her defender. It's a woman who could exalt herself, but chooses to let God be the one who lifts her in due season. She knows that the way up in the kingdom is always down, so she doesn't climb ladders, she lays foundation. She doesn't seek position, she seeks presence. The world will try to tell her she's being too soft, too quiet, too behind the scenes, but she pays them no mind. She knows the one who washed feet, who touched lepers, who dined with the outcast, and that is the one she follows. Her life bears the marks of servanthood, not as a sign of insignificance, but as a badge of divine favor. For God does not dwell in prideful hearts. He comes to the lowly, to the contrite, to those who have emptied themselves so that he might fill them. And perhaps that's the greatest paradox of all. This woman who looks so ordinary, who does not elevate herself, who bends low to love and serve, she is the one heaven trusts. She is the one God whispers to in the quiet. She is the one who changes rooms without needing to speak, because her spirit is anchored in something deeper than ambition. It is anchored in reverence, in obedience, in love. It's not that she doesn't have dreams. It's that she has laid them down at the feet of Jesus. It's not that she lacks talent or calling. It's that she has chosen to steward them in such a way that only God gets the glory. And when the time comes for her to rise, when the Lord calls her name and sets her before people, she will not be puffed up, for she remembers who lifted her. She remembers where she started, and she will keep returning to that place, not because she has to, but because that's where he is. And that is the second mark of a woman chosen by God. She wears the mantle of humility and servanthood like a crown. There is something unmistakable about a woman who walks in divine wisdom. It's not the kind of knowledge that comes from books or titles or age. It's not sharpened by degrees or certifications. This kind of wisdom is different. It comes from time spent with God. It flows from intimacy, from surrender, from quiet hours when the world is asleep and her heart is open to heaven. A woman chosen by God does not lean on her own understanding, because she has learned, often through pain, that her insight is limited, but his is perfect. She carries this wisdom like oil in her lamp. She doesn't rush decisions, doesn't panic when things change, doesn't speak just to fill the silence. Her words are few, but they're weighty. They carry presence because they've been birthed in prayer. When she speaks, it's not to impress, but to guide. She isn't trying to be right. She's trying to be aligned with truth, with love, with the Spirit of God. And you can sense it. You can be in a room full of noise and still hear her silence because it is full of discernment. She doesn't just know facts, she understands people. She has eyes that see deeper than what's on the surface. Not because she's nosy or clever, but because God has entrusted her with the gift of discernment. She can tell when someone's smile is hiding sorrow. She can sense when a room is heavy even if no one has said a word. And she doesn't just notice, she responds. quietly, compassionately, with wisdom that cuts through the fog and brings clarity to the confused. This woman has been through things that taught her how to listen, not just to others, but to the Spirit. She has missed his voice before, and she has felt the sting of stepping outside his will. So now she is careful. Not anxious, but reverent. She has learned that haste is the enemy of wisdom, and so she pauses, waits, prays, listens, and then moves. She may not always be fast, but she is always grounded. The world may mock this slowness. They may see it as indecision. But those who know God's ways recognize it for what it is, obedience, because a woman chosen by God does not seek to react. She seeks to respond in alignment with His timing, His will, His heart. She doesn't chase after every opportunity or invitation. She weighs them. She asks, "Lord, is this from you?" and waits until peace confirms the path. I've seen how such wisdom can shift the entire atmosphere. A woman who walks with God can walk into chaos and not be shaken. Not because she has all the answers, but because she knows where to find them. She doesn't have to argue or compete. She's not swayed by popularity or pressured by urgency. Her ear is tuned to a higher frequency, and because of that, people around her begin to rise. They begin to see differently, to think more clearly, to speak more gently. Her presence reminds them that heaven is near. She has learned, often through painful experience, that not every open door is from God, and not every closed door is a loss. Some of her greatest moments of clarity came not in moments of success, but in surrender. When she laid down what she thought she wanted and asked God for what He wanted instead, that's when wisdom began to grow. Because divine wisdom isn't just about making the right decisions. It's about living the right posture. One that says, "Lord, lead me, and I'll follow." This woman knows that there's a difference between cleverness and counsel, between charisma and character. And while the world often chooses the loudest, God chooses the wisest, those who are teachable, those who don't just want to know more. They want to become more like Him. And wisdom, true wisdom, is one of the clearest marks of that becoming. It may not make her popular. It may not make her rich, but it makes her trustworthy, and in the eyes of God, that's everything. Because when God wants to move in a generation, He looks for those who will not be easily swayed. He looks for those who will speak when He speaks and stay silent when He is silent. And when He finds a woman like that, He surrounds her with favor and protects her with grace. Not because she is perfect, but because she is wise enough to admit she isn't, and humble enough to ask Him for help. This is the kind of woman who becomes a well of counsel for others. They come to her not for gossip, but for guidance. They know she will tell them what they need to hear, not just what they want to hear. And even when her words are hard, they are wrapped in love, because wisdom never comes with cruelty. It always comes with kindness and truth. And so this is another secret mark of a woman chosen by God. She carries divine wisdom like a quiet flame, lighting the way not only for herself, but for all who walk near her. There is no crown without a cross, no glory without groaning, and no divine strength without some breaking. If you have ever met a woman truly chosen by God, you'll notice something about her. She's been through fire. And not just once. Her resilience wasn't born in comfort. It was forged in adversity. You can hear it in her voice and see it in the way she carries herself. She's gentle, but there's steel underneath. She's kind, but she's not naive. She has walked through some things, deep valleys, dark nights, heartbreaks no one knew about. And somehow she came out still holding on to God. That kind of woman doesn't just talk about faith. She has lived it when it didn't make sense. She's endured seasons when the heavens were silent, when prayers seemed unanswered, and when hope flickered like a dying candle. And yet she didn't let go, not because she was strong, but because she knew who was holding her. You can't teach that kind of faith in a classroom. It's something God chisels into the soul when all the props are stripped away, and He becomes the only source of light. She's not bitter, though she's had every reason to be. She's not hard, though life tried to make her that way. She's been rejected, overlooked, misunderstood, but none of it has poisoned her. Why? Because she took her wounds to the feet of Jesus instead of building walls around them. And every time she broke, He rebuilt her, not into the woman she was before, but into someone stronger, deeper, more rooted in eternity. This resilience sits not loud. It doesn't need to announce itself. But when storms come, you'll see it. When the winds rise, she doesn't fall apart. She may bend, she may weep, but she will not break, because her roots go down into something eternal. She has learned the secret. That suffering is not a detour in the life of the believer. It's often the very path God uses to prepare His vessels. Many people admire the strength of women like her, but few understand what it cost. They see her standing, but didn't see her crawling. They see the wisdom, but missed the weeping. They see the peace, but weren't there for the sleepless nights, the unanswered questions, the moments when she almost gave up. What they don't realize is that every scar she carries is a testimony proof that grace held her when she couldn't hold herself. She doesn't talk much about those scars unless the Spirit leads her to. But when she does, it's not to complain, it's to comfort, because she knows what it's like to be in the pit. And she's not interested in pretending. She's always had it together. She's not interested in playing church. She's more interested in reaching the one sitting in the back who feels like they've been forgotten. She knows the ache of loneliness, the sting of betrayal, the weight of carrying responsibilities that were never meant to be hers. But she also knows the power of a God who lifts burdens and restores. Brokenness, you see, God doesn't waste pain. Not one tear, not one sleepless night, not one moment of confusion has been meaningless in her story. He has used it all, every hardship, every disappointment, to mold her into the woman she is now. She may not be flashy. She may not be famous, but heaven knows her, and the enemy knows her too, because he threw everything he had at her, and she's still here. That's the mark of divine resilience. Not that she's never been knocked down, but that she always gets back up. And not in her own strength. No, she has long since stopped trying to do it on her own. Her strength is borrowed, daily, hourly, minute by minute, from the one who promised never to leave her. And because of that, she doesn't just survive. She overcomes, again and again. People look at her now and wonder how she does it. They don't realize that the fire she went through didn't destroy her. It refined her. She learned how to walk with the flames beside her without being consumed. Because someone else was walking in the fire too. She was never alone. And it was in that fire that she discovered who she really was, not what others said she was. not what her past tried to define her as, but who God declared her to be. She lives differently now. Her priorities have shifted. Her eyes are set higher. She doesn't chase after temporary things because she's already tasted what's eternal. She knows what matters and what doesn't. She's no longer shaken by every opinion or delay. The battles she's fought have trained her hands for war and her heart for worship. She walks with authority not because she demanded it, but because she earned it in the secret place of suffering. This is why she is trusted with much. This is why when she speaks, demons tremble. This is why her prayers carry weight. She's been tried, she's been tested, and she's been found faithful. And that is the fourth mark of a woman chosen by God: resilience that was forged in the fire, and a spirit that refuses to be broken. There is something set apart, something holy about a woman whose life is marked by purity. And I'm not just speaking of the narrow definition that the world so often tries to limit it to. No, the purity I speak of is deeper, richer. It touches not just her body, but her mind, her heart, and her spirit. A woman chosen by God wears purity like a shield. It guards her decisions. It guides her affections. It filters her thoughts, not because she's afraid of the world, but because she longs to be untainted by it. You can see it in the way she lives. She doesn't entertain what will defile her spirit. She doesn't flirt with darkness just to see how close she can get to the edge. She walks carefully, not in fear but in reverence. Her life is lived before the eyes of a holy God, and she is mindful of that at every turn. While others chase what feels good or sounds right in the moment, she measures everything by one question: does this please the Lord? She has tasted what it means to be set apart, and she will not trade that for temporary pleasure. Her purity is not about legalism. It's about love. She is not pure because she must be. She is pure because she wants to be near him. Sin distances us from his presence, and there is nothing more painful to her than that distance. So she guards her heart, not because she's hard, but because she's wise. She guards her eyes, her ears, her mouth, not because she wants to look better than others, but because she has learned the power of what enters and exits the soul. This kind of purity doesn't always get celebrated. It often gets mocked. In a world that glamorizes compromise, she will be misunderstood. But she is not concerned with being understood. She is concerned with being obedient. And obedience, especially in the secret places, is where purity lies. You won't always see it in her clothes or hear it in her speech, but it will be felt in her presence. There's a clarity to her spirit, a lightness in her step, a sense of peace that surrounds her. That's what purity does. It clears the way for heaven to dwell within. This woman doesn't try to justify her choices by comparing herself to others. She doesn't say, well, at least I'm not doing what they're doing. She doesn't look horizontally. She looks vertically. She asks, Lord, is this pleasing to you? And when the answer is no, she lets it go, even if it costs her something. Even if it makes her lonely, even if it sets her apart, because she would rather walk alone with God than walk with the crowd in compromise. I have seen the quiet strength of women like this woman who say no when everything in them wants to say yes, simply because they love him more than the moment. That kind of woman is dangerous to the enemy because she cannot be bought. She cannot be lured. She cannot be swayed. Her heart is already spoken for. Her affections are anchored in heaven, and it shows. It shows in how she talks to others. It shows in what she laughs at. It shows in how she handles attention, how she carries herself, how she navigates temptation. She understands that purity isn't just about saying no. It's also about saying yes to the right things. Yes to holiness, yes to integrity, yes to things that build her spirit rather than drain it. She's not naive. She's aware of how subtle the enemy is. She knows how easily the lines can blur. That's why she stays close to the Word. That's why she keeps her heart soft before God. That's why she surrounds herself with those who sharpen her, who challenge her, who help her stay the course when the road gets long. And don't think she hasn't stumbled. Don't think she hasn't had moments when she failed. But the difference is, she gets up. She repents, she returns, and God, in His mercy, washes her clean, because purity is not about perfection. It's about direction. It's about a heart that always turns back to the Father, no matter how many times it falls. This kind of woman is not easy to find. But when you meet her, you'll know her purity makes her powerful. Not flashy, not loud, but powerful in the spirit. She is the kind of woman who walks into a room and shifts the atmosphere simply because she carries no hidden agendas, no divided heart, no residue of compromise. She's been purified in the quiet place, and now she shines, not for her own glory, but for His. This is not a mark the world values, but it is one heaven honors. Because when God looks for someone to entrust with His secrets, with His assignments, with His authority, He looks for a pure heart. Not a perfect one, but one that's fully His. And that is the fifth mark of a woman chosen by God. Her life is marked by purity, not as a performance, but as a response to love. Some women walk into a room and draw attention by how they look. But a woman chosen by God carries something different, something deeper. It's not loud, but it's unmistakable. Her presence demands no applause, yet heart's quiet when she enters. It's not charisma, it's spiritual authority. And it does not come from position, popularity, or personality. It is birthed in the secret place, in prayer, in surrender, and in obedience. This authority cannot be bought. It cannot be imitated. It is not given, and therefore it cannot be taken. She has learned to speak only when the Spirit gives her words. She's not interested in drawing attention to herself. Her words are few, but when she speaks, something shifts. Not because she's eloquent, but because she's in alignment. She has spent enough time with God to know when He is speaking, and she doesn't hesitate when He tells her to move. She doesn't need a platform to speak with power. She can speak life to a stranger in the grocery store, or whisper truth into the heart of a broken friend. And whether anyone sees it or not, heaven takes notice. This woman has authority because she has been under it. She doesn't fight for control, she submits to it. She understands that spiritual authority is not about dominance, but about alignment with God's will. The Lord can trust her with influence because she's not trying to build her own kingdom. She has laid her own ambitions at His feet again and again. She doesn't grasp for recognition. She's content to be hidden, if that's what brings Him glory. And that is precisely why He raises her up. She carries herself with dignity, not the kind that demands honor, but the kind that naturally evokes it. There is a spiritual weight to her life. It's in her prayer. It's in her silence. It's in her service. She doesn't need to announce her calling. She lives it. It's evident in the way she loves, in the way she forgives, in the way she remains faithful when it would be easier to walk away. She's not just a woman of faith, she's a woman of authority. People often assume authority looks like bold declarations, loud voices, or grand gestures. But divine authority is often quiet, steady, unshakable. It is the peace she carries in a room filled with chaos. It's the calm she speaks into anxious hearts. It's the unwavering truth she stands on when everyone else is bending to culture. Her authority is not based on how much she knows, but how deeply she abides. The closer she walks with God, the clearer her voice becomes, not in volume, but in weight. The enemy knows this woman well. He's seen the power she wields in prayer. He's watched her bind things in the spirit that others couldn't even discern. He's tried to distract her, discourage her, deceive her. But she's stayed rooted, not because she hasn't felt the attack, but because she knows where her strength comes from. She has armor on, not just in theory, but in practice. Her authority is not in her own might, but in her constant surrender to the one who fights for her. She doesn't shout to prove she has authority. She whispers, and it carries, because she speaks from a place of depth, of communion, of fire-tested faith. This is not learned in a weekend conference. This is formed over years of obedience, years of saying yes when it was hard, years of weeping before the Lord when no one else knew the battle she was facing. Her authority was not handed to her by man. It was granted to her by God. You see, God does not give authority to those who want it for their own gain. He gives it to those who want him more than anything. He gives it to those who have been broken and still chose to believe, to those who didn't quit when the answers didn't come, to those who chose purity when it cost them something, to those who sought wisdom rather than applause. And when he finds a woman like that, he places his hand upon her. He entrusts her with influence, not for show, but for service. You'll find her pouring into the next generation, not seeking to be admired, but seeking to multiply the fire within her. You'll find her in intercession, calling things into order that others have ignored. You'll find her defending the weak, speaking truth, loving deeply, forgiving freely, not out of her own goodness, but out of the authority she carries as a daughter of the King. And when the time comes, she will speak, and mountains will move, not because her voice is loud, but because her life is in agreement with heaven. That is the sixth mark of a woman chosen by God. She walks in spiritual authority that is invisible to the world but undeniable to the Spirit.